Hi, Virgo Sun and Rising. Welcome to your June 2022 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So, your ruler Mercury goes direct on the 3rd of the month. And as some of you probably know, Mercury rules both Virgo and Gemini, and it retrograded in its own sign of Gemini back on May 10th. And when Mercury goes direct on the 3rd of the month, it's going to go direct in Taurus, which is a fellow earth sign. And that is a friendly angle to you called a trine. And that angle is coming from the ninth house. So basically what happened, Virgo, is that when Mercury retrograded, it was in the 10th house of career, and then it went back into the ninth house. So it's possible that some Virgo people, and I'm including the ascendant as well in this, the rising sign, that you had some kind of issue surrounding career matters as it pertained to travel. So if perhaps you got some kind of an offer for a promotion or something like that and involved travel, you had to think it over. Because on the 30th of May, there was a Mercury retrograde, a new moon in Gemini, and that was at 9 degrees. And really, I don't want to say was, because as I record this, this is in the future. But, for those of you who are listening in June, it will be in the past. And the point being that a new moon can mean opportunities for people, and the person can feel like they want to take those opportunities, but this is during this Mercury retrograde, and so it may feel like something is not quite settled. So for sure, these two areas are definitely featured during this time frame of May and early June. And one of the things too, so I would say since Mercury went retrograde on May 10th and goes direct on June 3rd and it takes a few weeks to get out of its shadow, I would say like until a couple weeks, till about the 17th or 18th of June, we're talking about a 5-week period. And during this time frame, some of you Virgo individuals may have had this issue come up. Now, it might not be exactly how I'm describing it, but something where there might have been either a job offer, and then you're kind of like rethinking things, because the ninth house can also be about philosophy, the meaning of life, spirituality, and your ethics. And so that can also play into things, because sometimes we are doing a particular line of work and it really resonates with us, it aligns with us, and then all of a sudden it doesn't, okay? And I think there's a lot of that going on these days. And it doesn't mean that whatever the person's doing is necessarily illegal. It could be something that is completely sanctioned by law, and yet you still feel funny about it. You think that there's something not quite right about it. And I will say, because Virgo rules the 6th house of health, if you work in the health care field, I feel like this is one of the areas that could see that quite a bit, where the person doesn't feel comfortable with certain medical procedures and they are kind of like rethinking their career choice. They may still be interested in health and healing, but they may want to go into a different direction. Another possibility of this is in the area of like the financial institutions, because all of these areas are getting dismantled. I know no better way of putting it due to Pluto and Capricorn. And even the educational field, there's another one that there may be ethical things pulling at you, because that's another thing that Virgo, being ruled by Mercury, may go into. So whatever it is, that is a possible Mercury retrograde theme, and especially at this point in our history of humanity. So Mercury goes direct on the 3rd, and then as in the next couple of weeks, you may feel stronger and stronger about your convictions, and you're not quite as, because you're going to make decisions based on your convictions, in other words. And if you have been wanting to travel or you're required to travel for work, you will get those things sorted out, hopefully in the 2 weeks after Mercury goes direct. On the very next day after Mercury goes direct, Saturn goes retrograde at 25 degrees of Aquarius. And for Virgo, this is going to occur in the house that you rule, the 6th house of health and work. Service to others is what I like to call it. Now, Saturn in the 6th is a very interesting place for Saturn to be, because it can, I'm talking about like when it's direct, it may call upon you to really roll up your sleeves and get down to brass tacks about something that you're trying to do. And I would say, even if it has to do with your own business, that this is just like that grunt work kind of, foundation laying that you have to do. But even if you are working for somebody else, it might be that you have to work harder. You have to work longer hours. This should always be, as far as I'm concerned, with the eye for the future, and not because somebody is taking advantage of you. And I think that's a very important distinction. And this may be something that comes up for you, and why. I mean, just kind of tying it to that Mercury direct, there might be some kind of connection there where you're realizing that you are being taken advantage of. Because I feel like I've had this discussion with Virgo for some reason. Why was that? I can't remember. Because maybe it probably was like a personal reading that I was doing, because Virgo is a sign that is very productive, and there's another word I'm looking for. Just somebody who's very industrious, who wants to do positive, constructive things. And because of that, Virgo people are very valuable in the workplace. And if you have your sun in Virgo, you can easily have Mars in Virgo, other personal planets in Virgo, and that will just enhance things. And so because Virgo people, and I'm just, kind of broad brushing, looking at it from that perspective, are pretty low key types of people. They're not going to tend to put up a fuss. That's going to, that's going to be quite different if you have like Mars in Leo or something like that, or the moon in Aries, or a fire sign. You might be much more in your face about people trying to take advantage of you. But in general, a Virgo person is going to just kind of keep your nose to the grindstone. So you're, something may transpire where you're like, hell to the no. I'm not going to do this. Like the Saturn retrograde, it might kind of take that, you might kind of not, it's almost like taking a vacation from this dutiful thing that has come over you, which you already possess to begin with. And I think that the Saturn retrograde might actually be a blessing in disguise for you, because you typically are very disciplined and stuff like that, but you may, play hooky from that influence because of the Saturn retrograde, that can make people less motivated, I feel. And that sense of duty might take a bit of a breather. And that could be good for you because then you could clear your head and say, wait, what am I doing here? On the 13th, Mercury goes back into Gemini, back into that 10th house. Good time to say this is a general reading. So the timing of all of this its exactitude is not going to be there based on your particular degree of sun and rising. But, it's a general vicinity type of a thing. And so Mercury, like I said, so it goes back into Gemini on the 13th, and only days later it goes back to the degree where it retrograded, because it only got up to 4 degrees of Gemini. And then we have this green light portal for a couple of months of launch, being able to launch things with the least amount of resistance, because all the personal planets will be direct and out of their shadow. And it's very important to note that later this year, there's going to be a retrograde of Mars in Gemini. So your career sector, Virgo, is definitely featured in 2022 in various ways. So keep that in mind, because Mars can be this sense of urgency, and it's going to be, I think it's not going to go, it's going to stay in Gemini, I think until like March of 2023. So it's crazy, it's going to be a very important thing for you career-wise. So on the 14th, there's a full moon at 23 degrees of Sag. Okay, well, Sag is the opposite sign of Gemini, so now we're talking about the 4th house of home and family. And so something can be resolved with that. Now, if you are planning to work overseas, you may be selling a house or, vacating an apartment. And there's something with endings or culmination that has to do with the home front. Maybe this is something internalized about your childhood that has to do with people trying to take advantage of you. Maybe you always were the one, that you were kind of a parentified child, and you were working from an early age because you had to, and you kind of keep that going, that story going, and maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you need to stop being so hard on yourself. I'm just giving you examples. I don't know how this will fully manifest for you. You could hear information about your mother or have realizations about her. On the 21st, the sun goes into Cancer. That's the solstice time. And Cancer is a friendly angle to you called the sextile. And that for Virgo is your 11th house of hopes and wishes. And this is another situation that you're going to start having these planets, not so much right now, but in July especially, in this 11th house. And it's really about your long-range goals. Venus goes into Gemini in the 22nd, so into that 10th house. Very good for career matters. Maybe this is when that new moon in Gemini will really be activated, because Venus is very attractive. It attracts money and good things to you via her, what she represents. And so you can come across very well to authority figures, for instance. And that can help to open doors for career matters. On the 28th, we have a new moon at 7 degrees of Cancer in that 11th house. And according to the late astrologer Jan Spiller, I think her last name was, I can't remember. But she had a thing about, like, when you have the moon in the 11th house, to you have 40 wishes. Now, I don't remember how she came up with this, if she got this from another astrologer, or if she just made this up. But, the 11th house is the house of gains. Okay. And that means that it's because I think it's because it's the second house from the 10th house. And so it has that material connection in that sense. But that means, you're going to have Venus enter that house eventually, sometime in the next few weeks. But even having a new moon here, definitely think about ways that you can attract more money to you career-wise. And it could be from more than one source of revenue, income stream. Sometimes, here's an example. Let's say you're a Virgo individual who's a teacher, and you might create your own little tutoring business on the side after school. And it's just a commitment of an hour to, and you could pick up a few hundred extra bucks a week or something doing that based on your credentials, perhaps. And just like little ways to pick up extra money, and that can build over time. So these kinds of things can be quite lucrative. And of course, it's not just kind of like dropping from the sky. It's something that you are going to be initiating yourself. But the more, when people just put all their eggs into one basket, obviously then they're vulnerable to that kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, where you might have an employer who takes advantage of the employees by burdening them with more than their fair share of work, knowing that they might have difficulty finding another job. Of course, I don't know if that's really true nowadays, but it still might be, people don't necessarily want to just kind of have to go somewhere else. And especially if the person is already very industrious, they may feel like they can get away with it, with certain people. So this can be a way to really feel more free in a sense. On the same day that you have that new moon in Cancer, there's also a Neptune retrograde. And this is going to be at 25 degrees of Pisces. This is your opposite sign, Virgo. So this is in the 7th house of committed partnership. This can be a period of disillusionment. If you have been dealing with some kind of relationship issue, now obviously you would have to be in a relationship to be disillusioned by one, right? And this isn't necessarily true I'm not saying that everybody who is married that is a Virgo or coupled is going to be disillusioned. I'm saying that if you have had some issues, Neptune in the 7th house can indicate deception, for instance, with a partner. It can indicate some kind of that person isn't who they appear to be, these kinds of themes. But it's not saying that this is going to be true for every Virgo person, that you are dealing with this. It could be, in some cases, it could be unrealistic expectations that maybe you have to adjust your expectations of another person. Maybe you are too much of a perfectionist, not only with yourself, but your significant other, and that you need to modify that, Virgo, and that could actually help the relationship, because you might be putting too much pressure on somebody to be like you are, and it's not everybody's like a Virgo. And I give you high praises, but we have to kind of tend to our own garden and not necessarily be monitoring other people and how they deal with life, because that can be a little bit intrusive and unfair to the other person. So just putting it out there like that. But I hope that you got something from this, Virgo, and it resonated with you. If you would like a private reading, I am promoting my double readings because they are it's kind of like a package deal. Full-length readings, there are two of them. One is chart analysis. The other is looking at some important transits in the next 12 months for a special price. I am a moon in Virgo, so I am, I feel very Virgo-esque. And so that one is called the Deep Dive Reading. I also have one that, you can either choose chart analysis or transits, plus a tarot reading called the Whole Enchilada. That's for people who like the tarot. And ask me if you'd like all three, and I can give you a deal on that too. And I have standalone readings as well. My website is rainamoonAstrology.com. The link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care.